You're listening to Stokvel Voice Podcast.
Welcome to our Stokvel Voice Podcast, which is an investment platform conversation for Stokvels. Before we carry on, I would like us just to do a brief intro. Who are you? I know you, but our listeners don't know who Tshepo is.
No, perfect. Good day to your listeners out there. So Tshepo is a young gentleman born from Soweto, Pinville to be precise, and the founder and CEO of Stokvel. Stokvel is a mobile application that allows you to manage your Stokvel administration and also do savings and investments through the platform. That is Stokvel in a nutshell.
Wow, thank you. Savings and investment on a platform. We know savings are being done through a bank. And now you're telling me that we're doing the app as a savings platform. My Stokvel is not going to buy into that. Please convince me.
No, rightfully put, I guess let's first clarify the kind of target that Stokvel looks for, or at the present moment anyway. So the app can be used by anyone, even yourself. But we see that a majority of the people that come on the platform is your already tech-savvy, young, future type of Stokvels. And those Stokvels usually do property investments or they do business investing. Or they just go on traveling a lot. So they love traveling a lot internationally. So those are the kind of target market that Stokvel actually is getting on its platform. Now you talk a bit about banking via Stokvel, so to speak. So Stokvel is an authorized financial service provider, meaning that we can actually allow or help you collect your Stokvel funds and distribute your Stokvel funds through our platform. So we've got that license to do that. So when you contribute to your Stokvel through our Stokvel platform, after we've done all the necessary banking checks like your FICA documents, your ID and your proof of residence, you then can now open up your Stokvel club account, if you want to put it that way, with Stokvel, which then it will sit under Stokvel trust account, and then you can contribute towards it and withdraw towards it. That's what we mean when we talk about banking from that perspective.
So in a nutshell, I can go home and tell my 25-year-old that they can now open their Stokvel account through Stokvel app.
100%. No paperwork, no signing documents, just going through the apps, logging in, sign up, and then giving us those documents that we require, your ID, your certified ID copy, and your proof of residence, the latest one.
What is the unique feature? I mean, we even if we are young, we still love the banks, the old traditional banks, if you know what I mean. What's special? What's unique? What's the big deal about this Stokvel?
The big deal is quite simple, is that one, security. Let's start there. So a lot of history why Stokvels have been taken for a ride. So from a security perspective, we send out notification to every single member. So not just only your executives, your chairman, your treasurer, and your secretary, which is what the current banking system does only. Because we know your entire Stokvel members, we can now notify them of any transaction that happens in your Stokvel account. So that's the first big deal, giving you that security and then that transparency. So a lot of Stokvels, again, taken for a ride from a transparency perspective. They always walk into a bank, all three of them, as in the executives, sitting behind long queues for just to get a statement, if it's not emailed to them, right? From our side, you can get a statement anytime you want. As a member, you don't even need to ask your executive. You can log in, get your 30 days, 60 days, or 90-day statement anytime you want and actually see what's happening with your Stokvel from that perspective. So these are big deals, convenience, So you can walk with us, you can walk into any retailer in the country. We are linked to over about 5,000 retailers and actually do cash transaction, into your Stokvel. You don't need to stand behind a long queue or do anything like that, or even EFT through our platform as well. So we provide that convenience, transparency, security, and we give dare I say, better returns than your typical Stokvel account that you get in a bank.
But what is the cost Will I get my money back as is? There's a notorious bank charges and bank fees and all that. I understand and appreciate, would like to appreciate the convenience. But when it comes to costs, tell me more about that.
Yeah. So it's quite simple. We charge per transaction. So if you don't do any transaction on the platform, you won't get charged at all. So if tomorrow you have to put 100,000 Rand, we'll charge you 89 cents per 100 Rand of that amount, right? And then further from there, you get interest. I think the current interest rate is sitting at 4.25%, right? So it's not tiered. If you look at the current accounts that you get, Stokvel accounts that you get in the market, they are a tiered structure. And what do we mean about that? For you to even get 3%, you need to put up at least 50,000 Rand. Here am I saying, give me 100 Rand, I'm already giving you 4.25%. So already from that perspective, the value is very high from that perspective. Why are we able to do that? Is because we've been able to go to a particular bank and say, look, we'll give you bulk. We are negotiating. We can say we're negotiating on the bigger majorities.
You got me there, because I was actually looking at you with suspicion and say, how do you manage to get that right? So it comes back to the power of saving as a collective.
It comes back to the power of saving as a collective. The challenge is that Stokvels at the present moment, yes, they might be collective individually, but they're not collective together. And that's where the platform comes. It brings them all together and able to go and get a better rate from that perspective, from the bank, say, no, look, we have so much Stokvels on our platform that all have so much amount of money, give us a better rate so we can give more value to the Stokvels from that perspective. You touched a bit on cost, so let's a little bit go back on that one. So we have 3 different channels that you can put your money through. I touched on cash through the retailers, EFT, and through the card. Now, when it comes to transaction, whether on a personal capacity or whether through Stokvel or your Stokvel, you need to acclimatize or appreciate technology, because it's the cheapest form of transaction. So if you were to walk into your bank today and do a cash transaction, they will charge you fees irrespective. I
totally agree with you, Tshepo. Actually, in our sister magazine, the Stokvel Voice, I touched on that gone are the days of the old-fashioned bank statements, which unfortunately most of the Stokvels, just come before the meeting day. The secretary or the treasurer has to run to the bank and pull out a statement, and that comes with a huge cost.
You also have to make copies of that statement. With us, it's a touch of a button, you get a statement. It's free. We don't even charge for that part. So for us, when you do something on the platform as the cash transaction, that's when we charge. And we feel that it's a fair and a better model. Unlike, I just want a statement and you get charged for it. It doesn't make sense.
So basically, we are making this cashless society philosophy a reality.
A reality as much as possible. You can't get rid of cash. We understand that. Hence why we got linked to retailers. But even then, we're saying, let's try to make it cashless as much as possible.
That's interesting. You mentioned investment. Actually, if you allow me, I would like to call your platform a 3-legged pot a platform. We've got savings, we've got investments, and then we've got, I think, credit. Can we just get onto the other leg, which is investment?
Investments.
Yeah.
So thank you for mentioning on that. So we've touched on a bit of savings. Now let's talk about investment. So we're currently looking to actually launch the investment side of Stokvel come July of 2018. We're almost there in the final touch. There we're mostly looking at, giving you more value than just the 4.25% and the 5.25% that we actually have from a banking perspective. Again, there's a Stokvel. If you're willing to take a little bit more of risk, then you can invest in something like an aggressive unit trust or a global international unit trust, or ETF, if you want to put it that way. ETF stands for your electronic trade funding instrument, right, which tracks the index of a particular market that you're looking at. If you're looking at the agriculture market, for example, it will track that from that perspective. So that's what we're planning to launch, basically. We see it as value, as like I said, a lot of Stokvels that come on our platform are more a little bit of risk takers. In fact, about 60% Stokvels on our platform are about investments. And that's what we want to give them a bit more, just with a bit more risk. We're not saying risk your entire Stokvel money. If you have 10 Rand, we're saying, take a bit of 3 Rand out of the 10 Rand and put it in that unit trust or that ETF.
Investments and banking and all that is a highly regulated sector. Now you're telling Stokvels to come to you and start, consider investing some of their money. How safe that could be? Where does regulation come in terms of the Stokvel app?
Yeah. So I touched a bit of saying that we financially service provider, authorized financial service provider, meaning that we've went through the checks that allows us to actually, for you to contribute your funds through us, basically. That's the first step of us being regulated. And by you being regulated, that we need to get insurance. So any funds that we hold as Stokvel on your behalf as a Stokvel are insured from that perspective. Again, it's sitting under trust account, meaning that there has to be certain authorization happen for that money to actually be distributed back to you. And the authorization only comes through the app via your secretary, treasurer, and your chairperson. So if there's no authorization through the app, the funds will never get taken out. No one has access to those funds from that perspective. So that's how, from a security and regulation perspective, it is not easy being regulated in such a very, very regulated industry in South Africa, but it's also good because we need to protect the funds of the people, end of the day, and I know that the regulator is looking at more how to strengthen the regulation. They're looking at Twin Peaks, such an example, where the Reserve Bank and the Financial Service Board are now looking to work together more closely. So it's getting even more regulated, and we plan, of course, to get to align to that regulation as Stokvel. So
in a nutshell, we're saying to anyone who's listening to this podcast now and considering, expanding their investment portfolio, it is fairly safe to actually get onto your platform.
To get on the platform, yes, I like how you put it.
Yeah.
To get on the platform and actually transact is fairly safe.
Yeah.
But don't forget, investments, there is a risk in investment, and that risk depends on the underlying portfolio that you take. If you are going to take a global international portfolio unit trust, it exposed to global market risk that happens on any, instrument that will happen. So let's assume our previous president, as he did, Jay-Z, was to wake up and change the minister like he did Minister Nene. That will impact the market. Indirectly, it will impact your unit trust that you would take. So you need to also understand that part, which I guess comes back to educating yourself as a Stokvel, which you do very well, Mambusi, through your Stokvel voice, and through this podcast going forward, so educating people that as much as we can take your money and invest it in a unit trust on your behalf, you arguably need to know what you're putting your money into. If you really want to be safe, then leave your money at the bank.
Okay, and be poor. Yeah, actually, funny enough, our motto here on the Stokvel Voice podcast is, it is about wealth and wisdom. Just on that note, would you then say to me, the Stokvel app, it is, amongst other things, a tool for education?
It's a tool for education if you are not financially literate from a understanding the finance of how to transact on an app, as an example. A lot of, for example, a lot of older people that I know, they don't do app banking. So from that perspective, it is a tool for that. We still yet to unpack the tool of educating you via the Stokvel app of what is inflation, what is interest, how do you calculate interest, and all of that. So that's something as a journey that we could look into, but we have not looked into it yet at the present moment. However, through our engagements on a personal capacity, one-on-ones, we are happy to talk about it from that perspective. But the tool itself does not provide that. It just gives you the ability to learn how to do transaction using an app.
Cool. What has been the buy-in so far since you started this journey? Are there any Stokvels that have really are active on your platform? Can you just share with us one success story, if you may?
So there has been a nice buy-in, especially since we got authorized recently by the FSP. So beginning we were just an admin platform before we became a transaction platform, as we are talking right now. And then since then we've had a lovely story called the Brownson Stokvel, which started purely at the end goal of setting up what they call a co-op bank. So they plan to set up a Brownson's co-op bank. But in order to get through that journey, they need to start as a Stokvel and then grow into a co-op bank. So in starting a Stokvel, we've seen great success. They've been able to transact almost close to 250,000 Rand in a space of 4 months. They've got about 700 members on their platform or on their Stokvel, and they're buying what they call asset crowdfunding. So they're taking their funds and saying, okay, we are going to take a little bit more risk with these funds and go actually buy asset for entrepreneurs to actually execute their business. So for example, if an entrepreneur is saying, look, I've got a contract to execute, but I don't have an asset to execute that contract, buy the asset and I'll pay you back for, I'll share my portion of the profit, as an example, right? And pay you back for that asset you bought for me. And that's what they're doing. So it's the kind of nice stories that we like to hear about a platform. We have also a cryptocurrency Stokvel on our platform. We also have smart engineering Stokvel. I don't know what they do, but they're also very successful. There's about 9 of them, and they put in good amount. I'm assuming that they're planning to buy equipment from an engineering perspective. Okay. So success stories like that makes us proud to know that we are enabling better Stokvels, basically.
One of the key features of Stokvels, it's knowing one another. That face-to-face engagement, meeting once a month or so, and neighbors, friends. From what I've just heard now, you mentioning the smart whatever and the bouncers. Do these people know one another, or it doesn't matter?
You can't take away. I think let's start with the basic of a Stokvel. You can't take away the trust element of human to human. You can't take away that. And that's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to give a system. If you come in and say, I trust the Brownsons purely because I've seen history-wise what they've done, and I engage with them at the Brownsons market because they have a Brownsons market, you can engage them one-on-one, and you decide to join the Brownsons Stokvel, then great. You've elevated your trust from just being physical to being also digital, right? So the Brownson Stokvel, from that example, I would say about 70% of them don't know one another, all right? But 30% would know one another, right? Through the Brownson's monthly market exhibition that they have, all right? But we always encourage Stokvels that know one another. That's the first part. Even on our website, stokvel.com, we clearly say it's important for you to know your Stokvel person face to face, because that's something that I don't think will ever die with Stokvels, personally, at all. All we're doing here is making the life and the experience of Stokvels more pleasant. That's all we're doing through technology. But please, meet for your chisanyama, meet for your 7 colors, because through talking, that's where the education starts. That's where the trust starts. That's where, you uplift one another as a community, and you can't do it. We don't still believe that you can do it via digitally yet anyway.
Wow. Tshepo, one of my main or my philosophy about Stokvels in particular, it's about creating wealth for themselves, not just being consumers. In wrapping up this conversation, what would be your message to listeners out there in the context of your product or your offering? How can we actually expand this gospel of Stokvels creating wealth for themselves, and maybe in line with the latest buzzword now, which is radical economic transformation?
All right. Yeah, it's quite difficult to wrap up such a wide topic. But I think my message is there is no harm in taking at least 20% of what you save to try to risk a bit. You haven't lost 100%, you would have probably lost 20%. Let's start there. So be willing to accept that I'm going to take 2 rand out of my 10 rand in order to invest, whether it's via unit trust or whether it's via a crowdfunding platform such as what Brown Sense is doing, or whether it's buying property as individuals coming together to buy property. The most important thing is that your foundation is set, which is your constitution. And if you really want to buy properties, then you need to register with the CIPC so that the property is in the name of the Stokvel. So as long as those foundations are there, take a risk, because taking a risk is important. And I think purely
take a calculated
risk, yes. And I think purely talking to the younger Stokvels, who are probably the upcoming Stokvels, is that what you have on your advantage is time. Because time is the most important thing when it comes to interest. Compound interest is the best thing ever. So the longer you are in an investment, the more interest it gives you, the better it is. So if you're 25 years old, come to Stokvel and start a Stokvel, because in 50 years' time, when you're 70, it will worth something.
Thank you very much, and I hope the Stokvel is going to grow, and indeed is going to, play a meaningful role, if it's not already doing that, on that journey of creating wealth for the Stokvel community in South Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Stay tuned to Stokvel Voice Podcast.